dismantle the trafficking network, though no arrests have been reported. We want to discuss this and more with Congressman Carlos Gimenez, a Republican from Florida. He serves on the House Armed Services and Homeland Security Committees. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us today. So this would not be the first time, as you well know, that Cubans have been recruited to fight at the behest of the Kremlin. But did the response from the Cuban government here condemning this surprise you?
Well, yeah, a little bit, because it's the first time I've ever heard such a thing. But I'm a little bit cynical about it, because there's also reports that the Cuban government actually signed some kind of deal with the Russian government to send Cuban soldiers over to Russia to fight in Ukraine. And just like they did with, are they doing with their doctors, they're going to pocket about 80 to 90% of the money. It's like $2,000 a month per soldier, so that it helps, the Cuban government. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit cynical about the announcement. It is the first of its kind, though, I've ever heard of it, but I sincerely doubt that they're sincere.
So you doubt that there might be an opening for the United States to exploit what seems like a disagreement between the Kremlin and Havana?
I don't think the U.S. is going to have any space there to drive a wedge between the Kremlin and Havana at this point. Again, I'm very skeptical about the announcement, knowing that I've also heard reports that the Cuban government actually signed a deal with the Russian government to provide soldiers for Ukraine. We're trying to get verification if Cuban soldiers are already at the front line in Ukraine.
So on the question of Russia's desperation, as many experts would read the situation, recruiting Cubans to fight in Ukraine, the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby described this reported planned meeting between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as a sign of weakness on Russia's part. What does that tell you about where Russia stands and its strategy in Ukraine?
Well, I think obviously that their strategy was to win the war in the first 48 hours to a week, and now we're well into the second year of this conflict, and it appears that they're losing ground, as we speak, to the Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian armed forces, and so it's not going well for Russia, and so they're going to need all the help from their allies, China, North Korea, Iran, and now Cuba, and so it doesn't surprise me that the Russians are looking all over the place to try to find personnel to fight the war. I mean, they have issues now with the Wagner Group not being there, or they're trying to incorporate that into the Russian army. Maybe that's not going too well. And then now their arms production. They're probably going to need some munitions from North Korea and other help from China and from Iran. Even though China has said they're not providing any kind of help, they are in a sense, because they're buying Russian energy, and that helps to fund the Russian effort in Ukraine.
So what happens on the North Korean end? They're looking to expand their satellite and submarine capability. How does making this deal with Russia facilitate that?
No, I think it does. I mean, look, they're allies. They're like-minded. They are enemies of the United States, and so the four main enemies of the United States are going to work together in whatever way they can in order to undermine U.S. interests, not only there in Ukraine, but U.S. interests around the world. So it doesn't surprise me that he would venture to Russia to sign some kind of a deal, get something in return, some technology that he may want. But the Russians, are in desperate need of munitions and maybe some other support that the North Koreans can offer to the Russian war effort.
And Congressman, the United States has already sanctioned 3 different entities tied to arms dealing between North Korea and Russia. Will more sanctions actually do anything? Does the United States have other options?
Well, look, one of the options that the United States has, and this administration apparently doesn't want to utilize, is unleash American energy production. If we can start tapping into our own energy production, especially in natural gas. We have maybe the largest natural gas reserves in the world, and start to exploit that, and then we can start to weaken Russia's ability to conduct the war by weakening their economy. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to unleash American energy so that we can undermine the Russian efforts in Ukraine by weakening the economy. So yeah, you can do that. You can issue more sanctions, and maybe they'll have greater effect. But I think, the best effect is actually to hurt Russia in the pocketbook so that it can't fund their effort, because right now they're looking for all the help they can around the world.
And Congressman Carlos Gimenez, thanks so much for the time.